Hey everybody, this is an overview of this knife, and this knife is the WE Knives 717 Valiant. And this is WE Knives' smallest knife, but as you can see, it's still pretty chubby. So it's not much longer than a Dragonfly, but it is significantly taller and way thicker than the Dragonfly. This knife is a titanium frame lock flipper. As you can see, it has no screws except for there, and I'll explain why in a second. As you can also see, this knife has an inlay of carbon fiber, and the inlay is really, really well done. The machining on this knife is just superb. It is not a flawless knife. There are a couple points that I'll make, but it's a very interesting knife. The blade steel is S35VN, and you can hear that. That thing fires like a rocket. This and this knife, along with the other knife that I handled from WE Knives, they're pretty good at convincing me that WE Knives makes the best flippers on the market. There are other companies that make really good flippers too, but in terms of consistency, boy, WE Knives really has got it. Can't wait to see the new 2018 Spydercos. Those seem like they'll be exciting. But this knife has a very unusual blade shape. It sort of has this reverse tanto with a heavy belly. It's a big, fat knife in the hand. And there's this point right here. And as you can see, this is a star head. And so what happens is these two pieces come together, and then the screw goes in here, and it holds everything tight, and then they use the pivot to secure the other end. So what I'm imagining is that it kind of looks like this, where it has like a series of holes, and a hole, and it passes through a series of pieces that interlock with each other. And when then this piece goes in, it sinks them all together, and that holds the whole thing tight. I have no idea how I'd go about disassembling this knife. I'll leave that to Nick. But it's very unusual, and it looks super cool. I actually like it quite a bit. No screw heads on the body of the knife are pretty cool. It does have the stupid star head screws, which I hate, but whatever. I'm not going to disassemble this knife anyway. But one point that is actually sort of an ergonomic failure. This clip is awful. This clip is really terrible. And it's one reason why it would be nice to be able to disassemble this knife, is I just take this clip off. I mean, the clip is just terrible. I mean, it's a sculpted titanium clip, which, as we know, usually have terrible spring tension. This is no different. But unlike a lot of those clips, this thing is just a poke fest. There's an edge right there, and there's an edge right there. And they did a lot to try to ease it, but I think that what ended up happening is when they eased it, they made this edge even sharper. And as you can see, it just hits the palm right on the fat part of your hand. There is no way to hold this knife without getting a hot spot. There's just no way to hold it and use it without getting a hot spot. You can kind of arch your hand over it, instead of squeezing flat. Kind of give it one of these. And then it's okay, but you're still always hitting this. The other thing is, as you can see, this thing is quite the paint scraper. Pretty much every corner of my house has been dinged by this knife during testing. The clip is just terrible. They need to get rid of this clip. It's just awful. The flipping action is crazy good. Let's see if we can get that. There you go. It's S35V and upside down. There you go. But the flipping action is nuts. And it just fires out there. And listen to this. It has a very strong detent. And especially when you close it like that, it sounds kind of like two coconuts clocking together. Like the horse hooves from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. One thing that's interesting is if you can see in there, there you go. Lots of milled out parts. So this knife is lighter than it would be, given how thick the titanium plates are, which is massively thick. And even then, it's still a pretty heavy knife. I mean, this knife is easily over 5 ounces. So when you compare something like that to something like this, you're like, oh, Jesus, that's so heavy. Or, if you compare it to something like this little beauty, it's even heavier. Oh, it's just so heavy. I'm not exactly sure what the advantages are of this over this. I mean, this is certainly fancier with the inlay and the sculpted clip and the two-tone blade and all that kind of stuff. But performance-wise, I take this knife every day of the week. So this is the We Knives Valiant 717, and look for a review coming on my website very soon.